There's something comforting about visiting your grandmother. The warmth of her home, the smell of fresh cookies, the stories she tells about the past. But some stories are better left untold. It had been years since Lily visited her grandma. Life had gotten busy, but this summer, she decided to spend a few weeks in the old house, nestled deep in the woods. The house was exactly as she remembered. Cozy, a bit dusty, and filled with the familiar scent of lavender and something else. Something metallic. Grandma welcomed her with open arms, her frail body wrapped in a shawl that seemed too heavy for summer. They sat down for tea, and Lily couldn't help but feel that something was different, though she couldn't quite place it. As the days passed, the unease grew. Lily would catch her grandma staring at her, a strange glint in her eye, but the moment she noticed, Grandma would smile sweetly and ask about her day. There were nights when Lily swore she heard footsteps outside her room, slow and deliberate, but when she looked, the hallway was empty. One evening, while rummaging through the attic, Lily found something odd. A box, hidden beneath old blankets, filled with newspaper clippings. She hesitated, then pulled them out. They were articles about missing people, all from the same small town, all from around the time Grandma moved into the house. Lily's heart raced as she read through the articles. Each one described a person who had vanished without a trace, leaving only their last known location, near the old house in the woods. Her hands trembled as she recognized a name, her mother's childhood friend, who had disappeared when they were just kids. The article mentioned she had been visiting a relative in the area. Lily couldn't believe what she was seeing. It had to be a coincidence. It just had to be. But as she flipped through more articles, the dates matched up with her grandma's life, one by one. The realization hit her like a cold wave. Her sweet, gentle grandma had a dark, hidden past. Determined to find answers, Lily decided to confront her grandma. She descended the creaky stairs, each step heavy with dread. The house was eerily quiet, the only sound being the ticking of the old grandfather clock. She found Grandma in the kitchen, calmly chopping vegetables, her back turned. Lily's voice trembled as she asked the question that had been gnawing at her. "Grandma, what happened to those people? What did you do?" The chopping stopped. The silence stretched on, unbearable. Slowly, Grandma turned around, her eyes now cold and hollow, the sweet smile replaced by something much darker. "Oh dear, they just wouldn't leave me alone. Sometimes, you have to take matters into your own hands, for the sake of peace." Lily's blood ran cold. She backed away, her mind racing. She had to get out. Now. But Grandma moved faster than she expected, blocking the door with a swift, unnatural motion. The kind, elderly woman was gone, replaced by something sinister, something that had been hiding in plain sight for years. Lily bolted for the back door, heart pounding in her chest. She fumbled with the lock, but her hands were shaking too much. Grandma's voice echoed through the house, taunting, as if enjoying the chase. "You can't run, Lily. This is your home now, just like it was for them." Finally, the lock clicked, and Lily burst out into the night, running blindly into the woods, never looking back. Lily never returned to the house, but the memories stayed with her, haunting her dreams. The sweet, comforting image of her grandma was shattered, replaced by the cold reality of what she had become. The town never found out the truth, and the house, well, it still stands, waiting for its next visitor. So, if you ever find yourself deep in the woods, near an old house with lavender in the garden, be careful. You might just uncover secrets better left buried. My name is Sophie, and I'm 29. I've always had a thing for old, forgotten things, antiques, relics from the past that seem to hold stories of their own. It's like they carry a piece of history with them, something mysterious that makes you wonder about the lives they've passed through. That's probably why I couldn't resist when I saw the mirror. I found it at a flea market just outside of town, tucked away among dusty trinkets and chipped furniture. The frame caught my eye first, old, ornate, with twisted metal flowers and vines carved into dark wood. It looked ancient, like it had been around for centuries. The glass was cloudy with age, but I could still make out my reflection. Something about it drew me in. Maybe it was the craftsmanship, the way the details seemed almost too perfect, or maybe it was just my love for anything old. I don't know what I was thinking, but I bought it. The vendor didn't even seem to care. He sold it to me for next to nothing. Maybe that should have been my first warning. I brought it home and hung it up in my bedroom above the dresser. It fit perfectly, as if it had always been there. For the first few days, everything was fine. I would catch glimpses of myself in the mirror as I got ready in the morning, and I even admired the way it made the room feel more complete. But then, things started to change. It began with small things, almost too subtle to notice. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. I would glance at the mirror and think I saw something moving in the background. A shadow, maybe, or a flicker of light. I would turn around, but the room was empty. I told myself it was nothing, just my imagination getting the best of me. Then the figures started to appear. They weren't clear at first, just blurry shapes in the corner of the mirror, like something was standing just out of sight. But as the days went on, they became more distinct. I could see them, people. Or at least, they looked like people, though their features were twisted, distorted in ways that made my skin crawl. One night, as I was getting ready for bed, I saw it clearly for the first time. In the mirror, behind me, there was a figure, tall, hunched over, with its head tilted at an unnatural angle. Its skin was pale, almost translucent, and its eyes were dark pits. It wasn't just standing there. It was moving, slowly, deliberately, like it was watching me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. The room was empty, just like always. I tried to brush it off, to convince myself that I was just tired or stressed. But the figures kept appearing, each one more terrifying than the last. They weren't just standing still anymore. They were moving closer and closer, creeping through the reflection like they were trying to escape the glass. The worst part was that the mirror started showing things that weren't happening, scenes of violence, blood, and horror. I would see flashes of people being tortured, their screams echoing in my head, even though the room was silent. There were bodies, twisted and broken, their faces frozen in agony. It felt like the mirror was showing me something evil, something I wasn't supposed to see. I tried to get rid of it. I really did. I took the mirror down and threw it out, but the next day, it was back on the wall as if I had never touched it. I tried again, this time smashing it to pieces, but when I returned to the room, there it was, whole, untouched, hanging in its usual place. It was like the mirror didn't want to leave me. The figures became more real after that. They started reaching out, their hands pressing against the glass, trying to break through. Every time I looked into the mirror, they were closer. I could feel their eyes on me, watching, waiting. It was like they were waiting for something, for me. Then, one night, I made a terrible mistake. I was sitting on the edge of my bed, staring into the mirror, trying to make sense of everything that had been happening. That's when I saw her, my reflection, but it wasn't me. Her face was twisted, her eyes filled with the kind of malice I had never seen before. She smiled at me, a sick, knowing smile, and then she moved. Not in the mirror, but outside of it. I froze. She stepped out of the glass, her feet touching the floor, her twisted face inches from mine. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. All I could do was watch as she reached for me, her cold, lifeless fingers brushing against my skin. That was the last thing I remember before everything went black. When I woke up, the mirror was gone, but I could still feel her watching me, waiting from somewhere just beyond the glass. My name is Jake, and I'm 32. I've always liked old houses. They have character, history, something more than the modern boxes people live in now. So when I found a place out in the countryside, cheap, I jumped on it. It was a fixer-upper, sure, but I figured with a little work, I could make it mine. I didn't know what happened to the previous owners when I bought the place. The realtor never said, and honestly, I didn't ask. It wasn't until later that I found out the truth, how they vanished without a trace one night. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Just gone. But I didn't think about that when I moved in. I was more focused on fixing the plumbing, getting the lights to work, and trying to make the place feel like home. At first, everything seemed fine. Quiet, even. I liked the peace. Then, the noises started. It was always late at night, just as I was drifting off to sleep. At first, it was small things, creaks, like the house settling, or maybe the wind outside. But soon, it became more distinct. A tapping sound coming from below, like something was trying to get out. I thought it was just my mind playing tricks on me. The house was old. Of course, there'd be weird noises. But night after night, the tapping got louder. It became harder to ignore. It was coming from the basement. The thing is, the basement was locked. The door was old, the lock rusted over, like it hadn't been opened in years. I didn't even have a key for it, but that didn't stop the noises. They grew more insistent, more desperate, until I couldn't take it anymore. One night, I snapped. I grabbed a hammer from the toolbox and broke the lock. The door creaked open, and a wave of cold air hit me. It smelled damp, like earth and something else, something metallic, like rust or blood. I hesitated for a moment, but my curiosity won out. I flicked on my flashlight and stepped down the creaky stairs. The basement was dark, the kind of dark that swallows up the light. The walls were bare concrete, stained with something dark that I didn't want to think about. Old furniture was scattered around, covered in dust and cobwebs. But what caught my eye were the symbols. They were everywhere, scrawled on the walls in what looked like dried blood, strange shapes and figures that I didn't understand. They felt wrong, like they didn't belong in this world. My stomach churned as I took in the scene. Then I saw the bones. At first, I didn't know what I was looking at. They were small, scattered in a pile near the back of the basement, half buried in the dirt. But as I got closer, I realized what they were: human bones. Some still had bits of flesh clinging to them, dried and decayed. My heart pounded in my chest. I felt sick. I should have left right then, but something kept me there, like I was being pulled deeper into the darkness. I moved farther into the basement, my flashlight shaking in my hand. That's when I found the altar. It was in the far corner, covered in dried blood, surrounded by more symbols. There were old, rusty knives scattered around, their blades stained dark. Candles, long melted down, were placed in a circle around the altar. This wasn't just a basement. This was a place of worship, something dark, something evil. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the truth. This was where the family had disappeared. They hadn't just vanished. They had been sacrificed. I could see it now, in my mind, how they must have been dragged down here. Tied to the altar, their blood feeding whatever dark force lived in this house. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. I was frozen, staring at the altar, at the blood, at the bones. And then, I heard it, the whispering. It started as a soft murmur, like wind through the trees, but it grew louder, more urgent. The voices were coming from the walls, from the very house itself. They were calling to me, pulling me in. I could feel them, tugging at my mind, at my soul. The house was alive. It wasn't just wood and stone. It was something else, something that fed on fear, on blood. It wanted me. It needed me. I backed away, stumbling over the bones, trying to get to the stairs. But the whispers followed me, growing louder and louder until they were deafening. The The walls seemed to close in, the darkness swallowing me whole. I could feel it, something reaching for me, something cold and hungry. I ran up the stairs, slamming the door behind me, but the whispers didn't stop. I could still hear them, even now, as I write this. They're in the walls, in the floor, in the very air I breathe. The house won't let me leave. I'm trapped here, just like the others. I can feel it. My time is running out. The house is hungry, and it won't stop until it has me.